We worked together to build this today, and we've also got a fantastic group of people in the chat that are part of our team. It was not just me and Alex, it was a whole raft of awesome people that built this. And so for any questions that come in, please feel free to fire them into the chat, and we've got a great crew of people who can help answer those for you. So without further ado, let's kick it off. So we have a good agenda here today. We're going to start off just giving a little bit of background on what is the Microsoft Sentinel MCP server, and then we'll do a deep dive specifically on what is the entity analyzer, why did we build it, we'll do a demo, and then some of those awesome questions that you guys had asked, we'll have our great moderators elevate some up to the verbal part, so Alex and I can help answer some as well. So let's start off here. What is the Microsoft Sentinel MCP server? Sentinel's MCP server was built to deliver automation without complexity. Today, when you build automations and agents, or you install automations and agents, they oftentimes fall apart or are very generic if they don't work across your organization's security context. And what that means is the activity, the assets, identities, everything that's going on in your org, those agents and automations need that to work really well. What Sentinel does is we add a semantic layer over all of that context, which is the Sentinel MCP server, so that your agents and your automations can retrieve and reason over this context in natural language. And the result here is that these automations and agents are now personalized to your organization and work really well. How does this work? So here we have a graph that shows our architecture. At the bottom here, we'll go from the bottom to the top. We have this Sentinel data lake, which is the raw data that you bring into the lake. And then on top of that, we transform and modify that data into a couple different modalities. We have tables, we have graphs, we have embeddings. And then we have an MCP server that runs over that data. And they have a couple tools that work really well. We have some that can search your tables, run KQL, you can build your own tools. And of course, we have Entity Analyzer, which we'll talk about in detail today. And we expose these tools through a couple different avenues. We expose them to agent developers in Security Copilot, in Foundry, in Copilot Studio. We also expose them in some third-party platforms like ChatGPT. We expose them in logic apps for those traditional SOAR workflows, and we even make some of the experiences embedded in Defender. So, like I said today, we're going to specifically discuss the Entity Analyzer in logic apps and show how you can build a SOAR workflow. And if you want to view the other tools and learn more about them, there's an awesome blog link here. And Emily or somebody else in the chat, if you wouldn't mind, excuse me, if you wouldn't mind sending this link in the chat so folks can go and learn more about the other tools, that would be fantastic. So why do we build the Entity Analyzer? As a SOC analyst, one of the main things you do when you triage an incident is you analyze entities. And let's walk through what that looks like and why. So when you click an incident today, let's take, for example, this one that is a high severity incident involving multiple users. If you go to the Assets tab, you have 13 users as part of this incident, and they could all potentially be compromised. So you have to investigate, you have to look at all of them, and that can take some time. For example, you want to go to the hunting page and look at each user's activity to confirm that compromise. You don't want to accidentally disable a benign user who is somebody that's doing very clean, intentional work at your company and then maybe disrupt their business operations. So you want to verify that they are truly compromised. When you come to the advanced hunting page, here are just three of the tables, three of many tables that you have to query and investigate to get that comprehensive view of the user and their activity. And we've seen that this takes our customers up to 20 minutes a user. So imagine multiplying that by 13. It can take a couple of hours just to investigate a single incident. And you always want to be bringing down the time it takes to investigate and respond to incidents. So we, of course, want to try to automate this entity analysis, but doing that is hard. Today, if you wanted to automate this entity analysis, you have to build really long playbooks. that have a bunch of different actions. They're going and gathering data from different places. And even once you have all of that data, it has to be parsed correctly. It has to be formatted. And then you have to build analysis logic on top of it. And that's just adding more actions to an already large playbook. And somebody has to consistently maintain that. Our goal, though, is that we make this analysis easy. An entity analyzer is the tool that does that for you. It leverages your organization's security data to deliver risk assessments on entities, and it enables AI agents to make smarter decisions and automate more tasks without having to organize and write a very specific prompt or engineer specific logic for each entity type in your agent or your automation. It's that out-of-the-box tool that works really well. At a high level, it works by going and retrieving data from a ton of different places in Sentinel's data lake. Then it correlates all the relevant signals from that data retrieval. It then uses a series of AI-based reasoning on top of the correlated and compiled data to deliver a verdict and an analysis on why that verdict was given. And so we share whether or not the user was compromised, as well as why we came to that conclusion and how. So let's go back to where we were before. Let's see how the entity analyzer changes that scenario that we were in previously. Again, we'll have the same SOC analyst click the same incident from before. We'll have them now visit the activities tab in that incident. And we'll see that the entity analyzer has given them a full analysis on this user. And they don't have to spend time hunting, analyzing, correlating, doing it themselves, and actually helps them make an informed decision almost immediately on whether action should be taken against the user. And we'll zoom in here in this next slide. But this just goes to show that 13 users times 20 minutes has now been drastically reduced because all that analysis is delivered up front. And so I'm going to hand it over to Alex to actually deep dive into this analysis and show how this works.
Thank you, Matt, for that. So let's go and see how it really looks like in more detail. So if we zoom in a little bit, how does it look like? So we have the analysis report that Matt was just seeing for the incident, showing like what the classification of the user was. If like in that case, the user has been flagged as compromised by the entity analyzer. We see the relevant alerts that have been used for this coming up with that verdict that have been that are attached to that user, including MITRE attack techniques. Additional any information in regards to IP addresses that have been found during the investigation by pulling all this data together is shown in the analysis section, including additional information why these IP addresses have been flagged as malicious or as suspicious. In addition to that, any kind of suspicious user agent gets flagged. Here we are also using some of the AI to identify that. So if you try to, or if you have some typical rule-based regex, for example, to try to bypass some of the static rules, the AI can help us also to find these kind of things. Anomalous behavior for the user account itself will be shown if there has been anything found. And in addition to that, the analyzer will give some recommendations what you should do next in order to contain and mitigate the compromised user. You will also see the data sources that the analyzer is currently using to come up with that verdict. So that was basically the output. The final output, once you've set up the playbook and everything running, this is what you will get enriched on the incident. Let's take a closer look in a demo. How can you come to that result? What steps do you need to take in order to get this incident enrichment? For that, let's go and open the security portal, which you are all familiar with. And on the left side, if you navigate to Microsoft Sentinel and Content Management, Content Hub, you can search here for Entity Analyzer. That will bring up at the moment 3 different ones, which we will see in a second, all under the Sentinel SOAR Essentials. So the entity analyzer URL trigger, the HTTP trigger, and the incident trigger. As you can see here in the server public tenant, these have already been installed, so there is no further action I need to take in the demo. I can directly jump to the configuration plate for that playbook. So on the left side, configuration and automation. If you navigate to the playbook templates and search for this entity analyzer, you will see again the incident trigger entity analyzer playbook template. This is the one that I'm going to take a closer look in the demo, but as you saw before, you can also trigger it with HTTP. This specific one will trigger whenever a Sentinel incident is actually received. And then the enrichment, as we see then when we go through the playbook itself, will do the enrichment. There are a bunch of prerequisites that you need to have in place, like necessary permissions to run it. But once that it's in place, the playbook creation is actually super simple. As you see here in the next slide, on the next screen, you just select the subscription and resource group where you want to deploy the logic app to, give it a playbook name, in our case, Entity Analyzer Incident Trigger Webinar. On the look back days, you specify the period of time that the analyzer will actually use for the analysis, in that case 7 days. And the last one is just specifying the connections that this playbook uses. Here we support managed identities, so you don't need to do any kind of manual credentials. So some need to handle these. And the final step is just the creation of the playbook itself. This creation of the playbook is, as you see, a couple of seconds, doesn't take too long. And once that has been deployed successfully, we can directly jump over and go to the playbook. Here, we have now left the security portal and moved over to the Logic App Designer within the Azure portal. And as you can see here at the very top, it starts off with a Microsoft Sentinel incident. And here, the playbook currently has two paths, one for the URL analysis and one for users. So currently, the entity analyzer supports two types of entities, URLs and users. As you can see here, the configuration of the user analyzer is super simple. It just requires your workspace ID, the lookback days, and the user ID that is getting parsed from the incident. Probably if you take a look at your current Logic app or your SOAR workflows, you have a bunch of data retrievals, parsing. So this looks much more complex, much more steps that have to be executed in the flow to come up with a verdict and the result that the SOC analyst can use. Here, what we have done, we have tried to make it incredibly simple and replace all these big boxes that you have with this, what you can see here in the middle, called user analyzer or URL analyzer. That will perform the entire analysis for that entity. So after the analysis has been done, that will be added as an incident comment message to the incident that has been used as the input. So as we saw before, we see for which user the analysis was performed, what the classification is, what the analysis result is, recommendation data sources, everything that is actually returned by the Sentinel MCP server. So that's basically from a configuration perspective. I pause here for a second. Once that has been set up and incidents come in, that playbook gets triggered. Here for the demo, that Logic App playbook has been triggered a couple of times. As you can see here, the incident came in, and on the right side, in one of the incidents, we had one user in the input. So this user U1190, that was the input or was actually involved in that incident. And then the user analyzer has been run for that specific user. In that case, it took around 5 minutes to get to complete the entire investigation analysis. And in the last step here, the comment gets added to the incident as the incident comment properties. Here it doesn't really look nice. So in order to get a better view and how the SOC analyst would typically view it, we jump back to the security portal and take a look how that gets added. Here we are back at the security portal at the activities for that specific incident. And as you can see here, there was one incident comment being edited, and from here, the SOC analyst can actually read it in a much nicer way. We see who the comment or who added the comment, in our case, the entity analyzer incident trigger webinar logic app. We see again what we saw before, for which user it was executed, what the classification was, what alerts have been found for that investigation, any kind of bad IP addresses, suspicious IP addresses, why we come up with that, any kind of suspicious user agents again, anomalous behavior, and the recommendation, for example, that we would recommend to take immediate action by, for example, resetting the user's credentials, revoking session tokens, and other things. So the last bottom, you see again what data sources have been used for that investigation. And that's basically the demo for the logic app. Currently, the entity analyzer is in public preview, and we see customers actively using that, around 100 SOAR workflows per day, what we can see based on the telemetry, where customers have already implemented and are using the entity analyzer within their SOAR workflows. During the private and public preview, when talking to the customers, their feedback was that typically they have to spend 20 minutes around roughly on a user investigation. By using this entity analyzer, they can bring it down to what we just saw also in the demo, to 5 minutes, something like that per user, which saves them a significant amount of time, and they can actually investigate much more efficiently. That's it on the demo. If there are any questions, please drop them into the chat. And Emily, if there are any questions that we can take online, feel free.
Totally. Thank you, Alex. Yes, we have a question that just came through here that says, what is the required input expected for an account name? I assume it's UPN, or is it smart enough to be able to use something like SAM account name plus domain to also identify the entity?
I see that, first of all, great question. Paul just threw an answer in the chat here for anybody looking at the chat. Right now we support enter object ID, but we are soon also going to be supporting UPN as well as input. And also, if you have feedback or ideas, Emily sent that form in the chat as well. So please feel free to submit feedback or ideas in that form, and we'd love to hear from you.
Awesome, thank you. And then we got another question that says, can we use entity analyzer that we can use to reset password and revoke tokens on a compromised user?
I'm going to assume that one is saying, like, can we use it to, help guide us to reset password and revoke tokens on a compromised user? And Alex, do you want to take that one?
I mean, at the moment, the entity analyzer is purely for investigation. It doesn't take any action. So of course, if you have your SOAR workflow and you build your workflow there and give it the necessary permissions, of course you can take action based on the outcome. So if, for example, the entity analyzer will say the user is compromised, you can build your follow-up, your workflow, and take action by resetting creds or disabling the user. So that's definitely based on the analyzer output. You can take action. What the analyzer will not do, it will not go and directly, for example, take action on behalf of you. So if that's the question, if the analyzer will take action based on a specific verdict, that's not the case. But you can build it in your workflow to take action based on the classification of the output of the analyzer.
And I'll just add to that we've already been working with some customers who, I think there was another question in the chat that we didn't raise, but it was about, what data is actually outputted from the analyzer. We have some customers that are building SOAR workflows and investigating how do I, from that verdict, build that action to disable, to reset the password within this SOAR workflow. So everything that Alex just shared, we do have customers that are actually investigating doing this as well.
Awesome. Thank you. We're getting quite a few more through here. So the next question says, if SIEM is piped to Splunk, is there any integration or relay of this event to Splunk from incident management and response perspective?
And anybody, honestly, I'll open this up to other moderators on the call, but I kind of give the same answer that we had for the previous question. You can send this data in this analysis anywhere you want, right? I think the reason that we showed this incident as, setting the comment to the incident is because we want to make sure we work really, really well with our own platform, and you can send this comment to Defender. But the beauty of Logic Apps is that you could send this analysis anywhere. You could send it to an email, you could send it to Teams, you could send it to Splunk, you could send it to ServiceNow, wherever you want to send this analysis that works for your organization, you can send it wherever you'd like. Anybody else want to add to that one?
I'm answering on the chat, Matt. This is Yaniv. Just to add, you can call the entity analyzer remotely from your ITSM via one of the Logic App examples that we have as an HTTP listener. And as Matt mentioned, Logic App can also rewrite or reroute the data back to any ITSM, Splunk, Phantom, whatever you need. So you can call it remotely, and you can also return the data remotely. Thanks.
Perfect, thank you. Our next question says, will it recognize a user that exists in two domains, like user A at domain1.net versus user at domain2.net?
I see Paul responded to this one, and I agree with his follow-up. Unless other folks on the call want to answer this one, I do think I would like to understand a little bit more details about the scenario, unless other folks want to take a stab.
Okay, no worries. Our next question says, what are the plans for other entity types, such as hostname?
We're expanding. Alex highlighted that we support users and URLs, and we're currently expanding beyond that across a variety of entity types. So stay tuned. Our goal is that when you come into an incident, you don't have to do part of it with Entity Analyzer, part of it with your traditional automation, but you can really just have a plug and play across all entities and make this really, really seamless. So stay tuned.
Perfect. Our next question says, are we able to make changes to Entity Analyzer? An example would be to add a source such as watch list for exclusions.
Yeah, this is something that we've explored. If you're familiar with like some agents, some automations allow things like custom instructions. This is something that we've explored. Watch list exclusions is a thing that we have looked into, and we may even do something a little bit out of the box with it. But I would love if you have specific scenarios to fill out the feedback form about that specific scenario, because it makes sense. And if you're suggesting those, I assume you probably have some other great scenarios as well. And would love to follow up.
Thanks, Matt. So the follow-up from the question about the domains says, we have a client that has a cloud domain and an on-prem domain. They use slightly different domain names, but the username part, the naming scheme is the same.
Got it. Go ahead, Yaniv.
I think it's related, as Alex and Matt mentioned in the call, we are doing the query against the data lake. So it depends how the data store in the lake itself. If the data store with domain 2 or domain 1, this is like the true source of the data. So it all depends how the data store in the SIEM itself.
Perfect. Okay, our next question says, is it possible to use another trigger rather than Sentinel incident trigger, probably alert trigger?
Yaniv, I gotta let you take this one. You did such
we can for sure. So we are not limited to the incident. We created some 3 samples: HTTP, incident, and entity. But we can use alerts. So we can extend the solution itself, or you can build it yourself. So the intention of the template was just to give you examples and getting started, but you can fly high with your use cases.
Yeah, I think Alex, you probably showed it, but just to reiterate, we showed the template, which is meant to make things really easy and quickly onboard. But you can search for Entity Analyzer as that action in Logic Apps and plug it in to any playbook you have, build any new playbook, as Yaniv said. And so if you're building Logic Apps on alert triggers, or you're building an agent with an alert trigger, I think there's another question in the chat about being able to use this within an MCP server in Copilot. You can really build any trigger, any automation, and our goal is to meet you where you are. So definitely.
Great. And then we have a couple of questions about cost. So is there any information we can share there?
Yes, we can. So today, the cost of the analyzer is based upon the querying of the lake, and we charge to query the lake, and we can send the information in the chat, a link to the billing data for specific details on that. Anybody else want to add anything there? Awesome.
Perfect. Alrighty, and then our next question says, how are URLs analyzed? Is it using the data from the Defender submissions, or are there other additional analyses?
Alex, do you want to take that, or does somebody else in the call want to take that one? I'm pulling up the link to the billing.
Emily, can you repeat the question for the URLs?
Yes, it says, how are URLs analyzed? Is it using the data from the Defender submissions, or are there any additional analyses?
I can actually take that one, Alex. I thought it said users.
No worries.
Sorry. So this is URLs are analyzed by looking across our TI data, looking across the prevalence of your organization, emails, devices, clicks, and also looking across the Sentinel tip platform, which is the stands for Threat Intelligence Platform, TIP, which is our portal for uploading third-party threat intelligence and creating custom threat intelligence. And so we don't just look at Microsoft's TI, but we also look at anything that you've brought in there as well to really give you a comprehensive look. And then, like I said, in tandem with prevalence data across your organization as well.
Great. Okay, our next question says, does Entity Analyzer and SOC users need access to Purview to get the entire related data?
There are specific permissions you need to have for querying the lake. I think security reader, security operator, security admin in Entra, I think should be sufficient to call the data. So not sure, Matt, if you can add something regarding Purview, but my understanding is these are the prereqs in order to access the data and call the MCP server.
Perfect. Okay, and then our next question says, is the Entity Analyzer activity in Logic Apps exactly equal to the Entity Analyzer tool in the Data Explorer collection in the Sentinel MCP server?
Yes, the logic that is being used for doing the analysis is exactly the same.
Perfect. Okay, and I think that was our last question that came through. Let's see. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, looks like that is the last question that came through. Alex and Matt, did we want to add anything else here before we close out? I sent through the form for feedback. So folks, if there's any feedback that you have, please send it through that form. But otherwise, Matt and Alex, anything else before we close?
I'll just add, go give it a try. I think the biggest thing that we want to reiterate here is we want to operate with a customer first mindset. And so we went and built this tool based on a lot of customer feedback already, but there's never too much. And so please go give this a try. Reach out to us if you have feedback, both positive, both constructive, and let us know how we can do this better. And that's all from me. Alex, do you have anything?
I think that's pretty much summarized it super well. And yeah, looking forward to get all the feedback and make it better.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Emily, too. Thank you for all of our moderators for doing the quiet work behind the scenes. Appreciate it.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much, Matt and Alex, for being our guests today and for sharing all of that great information with our community. Also, thank you to all the folks again behind the scenes who helped with all of those questions that came through. To all the listeners that are still on the line, if you're someone who wishes to aid in the protection of the world from cyber threats and desire to have a say in shaping our strategies, blueprints, and recommendations, then we invite you to become part of our security community.